Medieval society was no stranger to torture. In fact, I'm sure many of you have seen various depictions of it in film. And while you certainly wouldn't want to find yourself locked up in a medieval dungeon, there existed a fate even worse for some of the unlucky few. The term oubliette is from the French oublier, meaning to forget, and that's exactly what happened to people thrown into them. It's the dungeon below the dungeon, a place that you can only enter from a trapdoor in the ceiling, which makes escape practically impossible. In medieval times, the castles where these oubliettes were constructed were often ruled over by a local lord or knight, who, if you were unlucky enough to make an enemy of, could have you thrown into one at their discretion. A punishment often reserved for political rivals. And after being thrown into these narrow pits, where even light couldn't reach, the prisoners had little to do but sit with their own thoughts and contemplate the horror of their new lives. Sometimes, lords would starve their victim, or perhaps, if you were even more unlucky, they would have just enough food and drink thrown down for them to just barely survive. Though, considering they would be completely isolated from anything and everyone they had ever known, trapped in a never-ending darkness, all the while fully aware that escape was impossible, desperately wishing that they could take back whatever action landed them in this hell, as they were slowly consumed by their own madness. Perhaps starving to death would be considered a mercy. The people unfortunate enough to find themselves down here typically never made it back out. In fact, even in their death, their remains would be left behind to rot, perhaps to inspire even more terror in their next victims.